So there was a big fluff up in the world of cycling YouTube, and for once it was not us. Rejoice. It was GCN. They were forced to pull down the video. I don't know if they were forced to, but they did pull down a video and issued an apology after some lab testing on cycling shoes went very wrong. Basically, they were trying to measure the performance difference between expensive carbon-soled shoes and cheaper plastic ones. So they went all the way to Silverstone's engineering hub, been there, to do a proper sciencey experiment on a fancy test rig. They basically, the test involved them riding at the same number of watts in each pair of shoes. They then measured the power output at the back of the bike, hoping to find if the shoes would cause any power loss. They found no difference, and as many viewers pointed on that video out, that because if you're riding at 200 watts, you're riding at 200 watts. I said that sentence with the right words, but in the wrong order.
Yeah.
It made sense to you. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it in carbon shoes, Crocs, or barefoot, the power output is going to be the same.
I remember you telling me about this. We were at the studio when you stumbled across it. And it did... I think the first thing I said to you was 200 watts is 200 watts, or the power is the same as the power. It seems quite obvious that.
Yeah.
I don't know how they got that far into making it and no one said, yeah, but isn't the power the power?
Sometimes we get quite far into making videos and then we're like, this is wrong. We just
Do we?
throw it all in the bin. Sometimes.
Give me one example.
Okay, not this monument, not this bad.
Of course, people make
Maybe
mistakes.
it's during my scripting process. I get like I basically sit at home, plan a whole video out, and then I'm like, nah, we can't do this because we can't get the B-roll, or we can't do it. This is a horrible headache for them.
It is, isn't it?
Like, obviously, like, you know, mistakes happen. That is normal, but that is a big mistake, isn't it?
It's a big mistake. It's quite embarrassing. Listen, never say never. I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Oh, definitely, 100%. I look forward to it.
We haven't had to do an apology video ever.
Well, touch
No,
wood.
I think there was a demand for me to do an apology video, wasn't there? On Lachlan Morton.
Oh, because you said he thought he was overrated.
Yeah. Still think that.
Fine.
No apology on the way.
No. However, if there is an appropriate thing to apologise for, then I'm happy to. That isn't one of them.
So, fellow YouTuber Peak Talk was one of the first to pick up on the error and made a really good video on where they'd gone wrong. And it was actually a very respectful and well put together video. I was really impressed by it. He reckons they should have measured the physical cost to the rider, putting out the same power in different shoes. Stuff like heart rate, VO2, and lactate analysis he suggests would be a better test. But I mean, reading that, I'm like, oh, imagine how many different things can go wrong with that. And then you got the shoes are going to be a different shape and fit different. Like, it's basically a horrible can of worms, like a lot of scientific testing is.
It's very specific to the person as well.
Yeah. He's an engineer. So I'd recommend checking out the video. He breaks it down well and fairly.
It still is a better test because the test they didn't test for the thing they were trying to do. So his test would be better.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
But I guess it's hard, if you've booked practically, if you think you're going down to Silverstone, probably for a day, maybe even just for a session, which might just be a morning or an afternoon. If you have to keep the rider the same. You have to keep all of the test parameters the same, except from the shoes. So if you have a rider doing one set of testing and then the next set of testing, they might be more fatigued after. So that might affect results as well. It's so difficult.
And if you leave it the next day, then they're fresher. Or there's just so many things that is a really hard thing to measure.
But it's also why you have to question stuff like those specialized shoes claiming the 7 watts saved thing because of increased lactate threshold. Presumably they were working on some sort of similar basis, but
I read more into that, and it loosely is more than just the shoe. It's if you use their custom insoles and special cleat positioning and bike fit. So basically,
Right.
like, if your shoes fit,
right.
compared to a shoe that doesn't fit, you're going to save more watts.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Well, yeah. If you're a really uncomfortable pair of shoes, you're getting off your bike and not producing any watts because your feet hurt.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the silver lining is GCN's response was appropriate, it seems.
Really good.
Rather
Really
than
good.
double down and take the approach of, no, we're confident in our process. They've actually pulled it down and said, yeah, actually, we messed this one up, which is the right thing to do. Well done.
Definitely. I got called out by Peak Talk once.
Did you?
Well, I posted, and he was wrong. I posted a video of my kit hanging on a fan in the middle of India somewhere, rotating, drying. And he said, there's not enough relative flow there. Being an engineer, he was critiquing my drying process of my bib shorts hanging from a fan. And I very rightly then sent him another video panning across to the air conditioner, which was blowing or relative airflow all over my bib shorts. And guess what? My bib shorts were dry as a bone.
Yeah, take that science.
Day. So yeah, take that science, man. A-level physics. He's got A-level physics as well. He just carried on. I quit while I was ahead.
Ahead of what?
The other people in my physics class. Are they drying their bib shorts? They got wet shorts.
Yeah, his criticism was very respectful, I thought.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's fair. He's super smart.
One of his major criticisms was actually of the engineers that were at the hub, and why didn't any of them point out that it was a flawed test.
Since then, he then, in our back and forth chat I was having with him, highlighted a comment.
With Peak Talk?
With Peak Talk, yeah. And he was like, is this real to me? And posted a comment from Silverstone. I don't know if you want to read it out.
Allegedly,
yeah. He's like, is this actually from them? It's from a Silverstone sports engineer 9717. SSEH offers a range of bike and rider testing tools along with suggested best practice for their use. To remain impartial, we are unable to provide design advice or influence the planning of customer projects. How the tools are used and the data is interpreted is controlled by the customer. Some customers are trained and actually use the tools independently. As such, we're unable to comment on individual customer sessions.
So, what we do know is the hub itself, and I think this is probably what they're referring to, is a space that lots of people rent. So we have used that facility, and we use that facility via a third party, which was Zav from AeroCoach. AeroCoach rent that space and then are the engineers that operate it. So if the engineers that you are hiring to operate it aren't commenting on it, then that's where it falls down. I think
enough.
This is probably the actual aero tunnel operators themselves saying, well, we just rent it out.
It's not our responsibility.
Don't blame us.
No, and I guess if that is true, it's fair enough. I'll maybe just send them an email directly and double check that as well. But it's a good reminder to sense check stuff before you're filming, because ultimately they are reporters, they're not experts. As a reporter, you do not need to have all of the answers yourself. You're taught to investigate, question, and build that knowledge by consulting experts, and ultimately, repackage that in a way that it makes sense to a layperson, and then relay that. That's your job as a reporter, and to ultimately try and find the truth. You don't have to know what it is straight away, but you have to try and find it. So it's maybe just a reminder to sense check that if you have a test, just kind of run it by someone who's
Peak Talk.
Yeah, which is
so
what
he's
Peak
the kind of
Talk
expert
suggested.
you would get in if you were going to do a bunch of shoe stiffness testing, which I have zero desire to do.
Yeah. And then if it goes wrong, just blame it on them.
Yeah, perfect.
I do talk about this quite a lot, the idea that we don't need to be experts. We don't need to be the people that know everything, but we do need to get our information correctly. And, is exactly what you're saying. There are experts out there. It's why we can lean on people like Bike Fit James when we want to talk about technical bike fitting rather than us trying to guess it ourselves. Or if we want to know real in-depth technical stuff about bike stuff, we can lean on people like Nick because that's his bread and butter. We don't necessarily have to know absolutely everything, but exactly like you say, we've got to be able to find that information and then present it in a way that our audience wants to receive that information and enjoys it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of our focus is not saying we know everything, but it's actually saying, well, we know people and we know things, and this is what we've drawn from that, and we're going to tell it to you in a way that's fun and engaging, and you're going to have a laugh along with us.
Yeah, and there's also a point of you have to verify your sources. If you get multiple sources, you can usually like sniff out biases and that kind of thing. But there's nothing to suggest that GCN aren't doing this. I do think it was just an honest mistake. They basically just said that it was completely flawed and they couldn't see the woods for the trees. Whatever, it happened. They have a massive platform, so I guess in that sense, people will hold them accountable, but also when you fail big. And it's not like in bygone days where people were putting out newspapers and there's almost no feedback from your readers, your audience. Now everything's on the internet. You get instant feedback and it comes in a bombardment, you know what I mean? So,
which is fine when it's critique, and it's fine when it's fair, and it's especially fine when it's from people who actually know what they're talking about. What is not fair is people actually being dicks.
Yeah, I think there's a way to critique for definite, and interestingly, their apology has been received very well. I think people really like when you. We all know that we all f*** up, so people like when you take accountability for that, and I think it's probably actually given them some major plus points from their audience's perspective. Mm-hmm. So good for them. I think we can forgive GCN that mistake, but what I can't forgive them for, however, is the way they pronounce Van Rysel. Did you see this? I sent this to you this week. Take a listen to this.
Here are 5 things that you need to know about the new Von Riesel RCRF.
Ollie.
Von Riesel.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
What do you think that's bait?
Yes,
Do you?
100%.
No.
100%. Despite it being correct, probably.
It's not.
Is it not?
It's not.
Have you checked?
Yeah, so I asked the UK PR company how it is actually pronounced, and they said the van is like a white van.
Right.
And that the Riesel, Ollie is probably right, and it's Riesel. So it'd be Van Riesel.
Van Riesel.
But I can see why he's gone Von rather than Van. Von Riesel.
You got to commit to doing it always or doing it never.
Well, you're like part French, so how would you say it, part French boy?
Van Riesel, bruv.
Yeah, same.
Do you say Colnago? Does Ollie say that? Let us know, Ollie.
What do you mean? That's
every time you say an Italian bike brand, Basso. I mean, I'm upsetting Italians now. Let's stop.
Why would you be upsetting them? Maybe they'll be going, oh, it's nice he's trying.
Oh, finally, I understand what you're saying. My wife speaks Spanish and made a very angry face the other day when I called a paella. I was like, never making that mistake again.
It's interesting. It feels like in the US, they would typically pronounce Spanish words a lot closer to the original Spanish pronunciation. Like
they're way more literate with
pico
it.
de gallo or whatever it is. Whereas we in the UK tend to pronounce French words closer to, like croissant. We would always say croissant.
We would say Wasson.
Whereas in America, US tends to pronounce it more phonetically, like croissant. And I think if you were in America and you were a US citizen and you said croissant, you would sound like a dick. But that's how we say it. So anyway, Von Riesel.
Von Riesel, the new fragrance from Decathlon.
Van Riesel, but I'm still going to stick with Van Riesel.
Yeah,
because no one's told me otherwise. And until I am officially corrected by someone who can officially have the authority to correct me.
I officially corrected myself in a video a while back when I was calling a Trek domain.
Trek.
No, just Trek. No, Trek is just Trek. A domain is not. There's a Madone, and then there's Damani.
I noticed you started saying that different.
Damani is how apparently. I mean, it's spelled. You put it next to Madone.
Madone domain.
Come on.